but really grateful that you guys have come to join us. My name is Holly Austin. I am the founder of Ready, Set, Row and the RSR Elite Summer Racing Team. And I have been working closely with one of the people that I wanted you guys to hear from, Christa Samaras, Coach Christa, for about 6 or 7 years now. I'm going to let her and our other guest, Taylor, introduce themselves in just a second, but just want to thank them for their time. Thank you guys for joining us. So excited to talk to you guys about all-terrain skills and how we can teach these skills through sport. So if you have any questions along the way, please feel free to drop them into the chat. Coach Kate, who's here, will gather them for you, and she'll supply them to me at the end. And we're so glad to see all you guys here. So Coach Christa, thanks for joining us. And can you introduce yourself?
Sure. My name is Christa Samaras. I'm a lacrosse player, not a rower. I am married to a rower. But I was a super champion lacrosse player. I was an All-American high school, 3-time All-American in college, 2-time Ivy League Player of the Year, went to Princeton University. And at the age of 18, I made the USA team. So I got to play for the USA team for 12 years, play in 2 World Cups, win a gold medal, silver medal. So I've been through the ringer with sports people. When I was in 7th grade, that was when I got my first coaching job. I coached 6th graders, and I've been coaching ever since, been sort of obsessed with potential, my own first, and then anybody I coached second. And after college, when I graduated, many people who wanted to stay in our sport became college coaches. I was like, no, I did coach at Yale for 2 years, but then I spent about 10 years going around the world, coaching in Japan, England, Scotland, Wales, and here in the United States with youth development programs, really understanding girls all over the world. And finally, when I got back here, I really wanted to concentrate on helping the underdogs of my sport, girls who did not have access to lacrosse coaches or lacrosse teams even, but to help them get recruited to play lacrosse at the best schools in the country. And so I did that for 15 years. At our biggest, we had 1,200 athletes in our sort of in our umbrella, and we had a national team. And that's sort of where I meet Holly. That national team I actually ended up selling in 2014. That company transitioned and started a new company called Brave Enterprises. And with Brave Enterprises, I really interested in what held us back from going after the things we really wanted. So we were looking at fear, and we started to find out a lot of really cool things, which I'll talk about later. So now I feel like I'm an expert on fear, my own, but also acutely the fear that teenage girls have that holds them back from maximizing all their potential. We used to work with kids of all ages, adults of all ages, if we said pre-K to gray, men, women, non-binary individuals, and now we've acutely refocused on girls who play sports. So that's me. I'm Christa. You can call me Christy or Pickles, whatever, up to you.
Thanks, Christa. Taylor, can you introduce yourself?
Yeah, hi, I'm Taylor Volmrich. I am a junior on the Ithaca women's crew team. I'm a strength and conditioning major with an exercise psychology minor there. So I'm kind of aspiring to do part of what both Holly and Christa do. And I was lucky enough to meet Holly about a month into my rowing career, do a 2K clinic with her. I did not know what the numbers on the rowing machine meant. She had to explain it to me. So I've been working with her since the beginning of my now 5-year rowing career. And so far it's been going really well. So I'm really grateful for that. I am a 4-time RSR Elites alum. So I've been able to have the opportunity to race with Holly over 4 summers, including doing her 12-week virtual program over COVID in 2020, and really build some mental fortitude training on my own for a long time. Over that time, I also did Krista's month-long Brave program, a really one-on-one, but also peer one-on-one experience to be able to set some goals for myself and break them down over the course of a really tough year. So these 2 women are awesome, and I'm really grateful to be here with both of them.
Love you too.
So you guys, just to give you a big picture here, so the goals of today were both to give you an idea and define these all-terrain skills that Christa and I are both so passionate about teaching, and making sure that young women especially know that these are skills that can be trained, and you must continue to train them over time, and that they directly impact your performance, but also your well-being. both now and in the future. So I want to give you a little bit of background. There's actually some data and important things to understand about the current environment even. I'm going to ask Christa to talk about that while also defining the all-terrain skills. And then Taylor is here because we can, well, first, Christa and I could talk about this for like 3 hours, pretty nonstop, because we're both so passionate about it, and we don't actually want to make you all listen to that. But Taylor can tell you how she actually interfaced with the material, and then how it was transformational for her, and then how she actually brought it into her life, both as a rower at the collegiate level and into other aspects of her life, right? Because the whole goal and our mission is actually for her and others to learn these skills to transition into their future lives, right? Like when stuff gets really hard, not just like 2K erg tests or timed miles or whatever. So Christa, can you give these guys a little quick background on both what are all-terrain skills, and then sort of the little bit more on the current environment and the data that we found at Brave? And just full disclosure, everyone, when Roger and I met Christa, we, both of us, my husband and I, were both so startled almost at the impact and the saliency of what she was saying and how she was coaching, and how that was transforming people in such a short amount of time, that we called her up and we're like, whatever you're going to do in the future, we want to do this with you. So we work really collaboratively, both with Ready, Set, Row stuff and Brave stuff, so much so that we actually invested in the company in the beginning, right? So I'm not just like blowing smoke at you here. Like, we feel really strongly about what we're doing, and we know that it works. And so, you know, we're all in on this topic. So Christa, all-terrain skills and why we care about it and how it works.
Awesome. I love it. And because I'm going to give you a lot of information, I want you guys to open your chats if it's easy enough, and make sure you're engaging this. When I say something that you're like, what? I want you to put boom in the chat, or an exclamation point, or like we're in some kind of, you know, situation where we're interacting, and I can see in the chat when I say something that matters to you, so that when you stay engaged. I also want to make sure when you're curious about something, we say the underbelly of bravery is curiosity. So when something I say sparks something in you, like I want to know more, pop that question in the chat, and Kate can help us come to it. But I've also got my chat open. So give me a BOOM. Anybody out there who can chat really quickly, make it all caps or something, so it's super fun. I'll give you the first one out there. Okay, here we are together, people. We are moving together. This is one of the all-terrain skills I'm talking about. Just this idea of engagement. You could call it like civic engagement. You could call it community engagement. You can call it peer engagement. You can call it community engagement. All-terrain skills are these things that we need to use now to help us perform now, to help us manage now, stress, anxiety, depression, all things that I struggle with as an athlete and after I was a champion, right? All-terrain skills are these big themed things that we can unplug from one area of our life to replug into another. And I'll tell a quick story. I was the best lacrosse player in the country, possibly even the world. And I had eyes, I understood what I was doing every day. It's not like I still was an insecure girl, even if I was a super confident lacrosse player. I did not understand, being at a school like Princeton, how to apply the grittiness I had for lacrosse to my schoolwork. And so after my sophomore year, after I became the first man or woman to score 50 goals in a single season, I failed out of college. And I did not have anyone in my life to say, oh my gosh, you have all the makings of a great student. We just have to figure out how to unplug from one area and replug into other. So I think all-terrain skills at the very core are super skills that you can apply across the board. The fact of the matter is, in the state of the teenage girl right now, is that you're really compressed. You're really busy, especially if you're an athlete. You're looking towards college and trying to get in college. You're trying to perform right now. You're trying to be whatever you are trying to be on social media, if you're allowed on it. You are trying to aspire and make all your goals like done and livable. But it's a really hard road to manage even your life at the moment. I know that was true for me at that time, and I can't imagine 25 years later what it looks like for you. So what we are trying to do is use the data that we've taken as a company. So there's a couple things that are really important. One is what we call the fear inflection point. Your fears as a kid are very different than your fears as an adult. And that changes quite young, between 11 and 13 years old. So maybe when you were 11 years old, you're like, I want to do blah, blah, blah. And it's a big, big, big goal. We found that girls in middle school had the same goals as girls in high school, but girls in high school started to be affected by the pressure or the stress of like actually pursuing those goals. They became scared of failure. They became scared of what other people would think if they failed. They became nervous that they wouldn't achieve their own aspirations. And we had to, as their coaches, pull them along. So once we figured out that the inflection point happened between 11 and 13, then our programming started to address, what is it like to move in your fear, not to not have fear? Right? So now we got all these fears. What are they? How do we navigate and build coping mechanisms? And that's where the altering skills were born. We realized there were a lot of skills that transfer, ones you guys get to practice as athletes all the time, but you don't actually know they help with so many other things. People, give me a BOOM in chat. Come on. Okay, that's one thing, fear inflection point. Second thing is that we have literally worked with 10,000 people. You guys, we have like hundreds of thousands of data points. But when we were looking through the like little like spiders trying to figure out and make sense of all this, why does bravery matter is the question I've been asking myself for literally the last 5 years. I would come into my office, I would call Holly and Roger and be like, tell me why bravery matters. Like, don't you know? I'm like, I know, I feel it, but I'm trying to articulate why is bravery so important so that we can make it, put it into our programming. And guess why bravery is really important. Bravery, when we ask kids, how brave do you feel on a scale of 1 to 10? And we ask them, how confident do you feel on a scale of 1 to 10? Whether you think that there's a difference, they are so heavily correlated. And if I say to kids, do you want to be brave? Sometimes they say yes. But if I say to kids, do you want to be confident? Every single one of them is like, yes, I want to be more confident. They know exactly what they would do with more confidence. They would know what they would go after with more confidence. And I'm like, well, what if I told you? What if I told you? Bravery and confidence were exactly correlated. And that bravery is a lever to increasing confidence. Increase the things that you do that scare you. I mean, this is within reason, people. We're not talking about like physical, like messing with your physical safety. These are emotional things. When you're outside of your emotional comfort zone, you start to feel more confident. It is insane. So that bravery and confidence are correlated, allowed us to start using bravery as a lever on a number of levels. So we got fear inflection point, when your fears change from like physical based things to emotional based things like failure. 2, that fear, that confidence and bravery are heavily correlated. So we use bravery as a lever. And 3, we realized that there weren't many differences between boys and girls through the inflection point. So take a 9-year-old boy and a 9-year-old girl and grow them up to 22 years old. Okay, actually then grow them up to 65 years old. Okay, so in our data, we have this spread and we have it convincingly. It's not like our data set is like, oh, just Christa, I want to tell you something. Our data set opens the curtains and screams stuff out on a microphone. And this is what it basically said. Girls and boys all drop in bravery and confidence between the ages of 9 and 14, very acutely, very, very, very sharply. And then between 14 and 22, it's like up and downs, up and downs, up and downs, up and downs. They still kind of mostly go down. And at 22, between 22 and 65, everybody's on a long, slow recovery of both bravery and confidence. So we were interested, well, that 9 years old to 14 years old drop, we want to start addressing that. So, okay, so they're the same, but where are they different? It's this question. When we ask in our surveys to over 6,000 people, how confident are you compared to your peers? Are you more confident than your peers? And everybody out there right now, just have it in your brain. Are you more confident than your peers? Are you as confident as your peers? Or are you less confident than your peers? Boys, at the age of 8, at the age of 12, at the age of 14, at the age of 18, at the age of 22, at the age of 65, about 10% of boys would say that they feel less confident than their peers. It never changes for men. Girls, at the age of 8, it's 10%, just like boys. At the age of 14 or for high school, it goes dramatically up to 19%. So 1 out of every 5 girls. And then in college, it goes beyond 25%. 1 out of every 4 women, young women, would say that they're less confident than their peers. And then once you get post-collegiate, men remain at 8 to 10% and women hover anywhere between, depending on the group, 20 to 35%. But the average we say is 25%. Now, how does this like actually affect people? People who say that they're less confident than their peers, when they classify themselves that way, their bravery and confidence scores, remember the ones I talked about that correlated, are dramatically lower, 50 to 70% lower than those people who feel that they're as confident or more confident than their peers. So our programming really worked to get into the underbelly of how do people define confidence compared to their peers. And that is why we built a community. That's why it became so much more important to have a self-selected community where people wanted to work on their bravery together. Give me a BOOM, because that is pretty awesome. For 5 years of a little small engine that could company trying to figure out and define all these things and then actually put it into play with programming. So that's our findings. And it's why we turn to all terrain skills to make sure we can't just rely on bravery anymore as a lever. We know that can't be the only lever. And so we use things like curiosity, purpose. We use optimism and hope, things that really help me as an athlete, but also that science backs right now. So we look deep into the psychological science of things, the behavioral science, pop science, and we sort of like amalgamate it all and then build really actionable programming that helps you practice that exact skill in real life. I want everybody right now to practice the skill of curiosity. Of everything that I said, what feels most interesting to you? What would be your first follow-up question if the mic literally came to you? Think of something that like you want to know a little bit more about, and just pop it in the chat if you're able. That'll get us to see where are people interested in the things that were already said. Get it going, people, get it going. Don't be nervous. No question are you scared to do the questions? Maybe that's real. Right? Like already, then we've now gotten you 2 different ways. Like, I don't want to write a question. What if I'm a parent? This is supposed to be for kids. I'm a man. This is supposed to be for women. Like, I don't know what my question would be. I see 0 questions in the chat right now. Is that a fear that's capturing you? What is it? This is
Amanda asked a question earlier, Christa. Let me ask. She didn't really ask a question.
But right now, I would say we have 39 people on here. I type slowly. Yes, Irma, we got you. I love it. Yeah. So this is the thing. And everybody on this call right now, whether you're a teenager or not, this is exactly what happens when you ask a teenager a question in a class or on the field. We are asking them to make split-second decisions in the field, in training, in class. And it's like, you know what I mean? And if there are any adults out here being at all captured by any sort of fear by putting a question in the chat, this is what real life looks like all the time for maybe everybody, but specifically for teenage girls. And if you're a teenage girl out there and you're like, she's right on target, then put a BOOM in the chat. Just saying. Yeah. So this isn't something that we know how hard it is for you. And I think that's one thing that Holly and I share. Like, you know, a lot of people talk about, what do they call it? Empathy fatigue or compassion fatigue. And I think as a coach, like I'm like I want to be able to absorb the pain and understanding of what teenage girls are going through in order to make programming that makes it feel like somebody's listening and gets them. And more importantly, I want to put them together so that I'm not the one talking to them. They're talking to each other and starting to really independently form it. So Holly, I'm going to throw it back to you. I read the chat and the questions and you can kick it to Taylor.
Yeah. So earlier, Amanda, you didn't ask a question, but you made a statement, which you were right, which is that the word bravery is usually referring to like, you know, firefighters and, you know, emergency personnel and stuff like that versus confidence is sort of a, I don't forget what you put, but it's like it's common jargon now almost. And what I would say is, yes. And one of the goals, at least that I have for my programs, and I think Christa would agree is, but I'll let her speak to it, is the idea is to normalize fear for the teenagers in the program, right? So that people, in fact, Christa have told me right from the beginning, don't ever use the word fearless, because if you tell a kid they shouldn't be, they will never be. That's just not honest. And if you tell them to be, then when they feel fear, they're gonna be like, I'm not supposed to, don't tell anyone, or pretend like you don't have it, and they aren't honest with it, right? So we try to normalize fear, like you are absolutely going to have this. And so the goal is to recognize that you have it faster and then manage it, right? Don't get rid of it. Like you're totally going to have these strong emotions potentially and fears. So don't expect that they're going to go away. And we don't have a magic wand to make it go away, nor do you want them to go away, right? There's a lot of really great things that can come with a certain level of stress. It's just excessive stress, unwarranted stress is bad. So, Taylor, do you have anything, like, is this stirring anything from your experiences that you want to add with Chris's intro here?
I mean, there's not a lot to add to what Krista is saying necessarily, but it's why I keep coming back. Like, hearing Krista talk about these things, her energy towards it is like part of what keeps you coming back for it. It's like you get sucked in. And I think that's true of both of your programs. I come back because there are results, and I personally have felt the results in my athletic performance over the course of working with Holly from like a rowing athletics perspective. I dropped 35 seconds on my 2K in 4 years, which is a pretty big jump. And not all of that was purely speed based. Like, you can't lose, Holly said this to me, you can't lose 17 seconds you can't train that in 3 weeks. That's mental skills. So I think that speaks really to like the programming and how you're able to develop skills in a pretty short period of time. And I mean, that's working on them pretty intensively over 3 weeks, but over a relatively short period of time.
I wanted to say, Taylor, do you mind if I jump in here? So Taylor was trying to beat her, to break her 2K time by like a lot. She happened to be in the program with Holly at the same time she was in the program with me. And I was like, oh, I think I can help. I don't know anything about rowing, but I think I can help. And so we were doing these like mental exercises. And then she said, Krista, can I call you while I'm doing my 2K? And can you try to pump me up the whole time I'm doing it? I'm like, sure, we need to break it down into smaller pieces. So I kind of know what to do as a coach. And it was so amazing, one, to see her bravery and letting me come in on this very like hard test that she was doing by herself in some place where you were. And I was like, and being open enough for me to try to talk her through her pain. But also there was a crazy self-awareness of like, you know, and Taylor, I'm not going to use the exact like numbers, but you were like, I want to get a 7 minutes or let's just make crazy numbers. I want to get a 6 minute. And I was like, okay, what are you right now? She'd be like, I'm at a 6:45. I'm like, well, what's realistic? Well, she's like, I'm like, realistically, let's get a goal. She was like, a 6 minute is not actually realistic, but a 6:30 is. I'm like, great. So anything that's a 6:30 or below, we can go for. Maybe it was 6:40. It wasn't like it was a dramatic PR. It was just like a 1 second break. And so once we sort of like started to like go back and forth on how do you break this down? How do you train these different pieces? All of which she had been introduced to by Holly, right? And then having me there for the practice round of it, it was like, listen, we know exactly your map. We know exactly your map. We know exactly when you're going to hit the hard parts. You know exactly when you need to give yourself something in your brain that you trust. That's not fake. And then you didn't do it on that call with me, but you did it subsequently. So it was amazing. And watching that in action, like I can't even say how inspiring bravery is. What we did find out is there are 3 ways to get more brave. If you're wondering out there, well, a lot of people are asking, how do I practice bravery? Well, there's 3 major buckets of it. One of them is like basically reflection, honest self-talk. So being honest with yourself. Now, a lot of people say, you know, you should have positive self-talk. You should do affirmations. I am beautiful. I am amazing. I am great. But the problem is, as most teenagers are out there might know, is it's what they call like toxic positivity. It's just one of those, you know, new key phrases of like, I'm being positive because everybody tells me I should be positive and like I should fake it till I make it, except for I don't believe in it. So I'm actually mad at myself for like saying that I'm great, even though I don't feel like I'm great. So we, instead of focusing on positivity, we focus on honesty. And from honesty, it'd be great to get to positivity. It's way more constructive for you, but sometimes it takes other people a little bit longer. But you know you're on fundamental core ground when you can be honest with yourself and your coach can be like, yes, you are being honest with yourself. Here, a lot of people ask, or somebody asked about confidence being like, what's the difference between confidence and arrogance? Is confidence the same as arrogance? This is like the chapters in our book. So I think some of you guys probably already have this. This book is One Way to Be Brave, and it really is like a confidence journal. And the first title is Confidence is Not Arrogance, right? Confidence is a belief in your skills and abilities. A belief in your skills and abilities. For me, I would say, like, was I arrogant to say that I was the best lacrosse player in the world? No, not if you looked at the stat books. Like, it was obvious. If I had been saying to my coaches, I don't feel like I'm that good, they would be like, what do you mean feel like you're not good? Let's look at the facts. And one of the very hardcore skills we deal with when it comes to confidence and arrogance is what we call facts versus feelings. Making actions based on facts, but giving tons of room to have the feelings, right? I feel like I'm insecure. I feel like I'm not good enough. I feel like I just am coming off the game and I played badly. And the coach says, okay, well, what are the 3 things you went to do in this game? Well, I wanted to go for 1 interception, whether I made it or not. Did you do that? Yes, I went for 2. I bombed them both. So they're like, well, you still went for them. That sort of thing. Okay, you're right. I did do that. I wanted to get 3 ground balls or whatever. Everybody has this for your sport. It doesn't matter what sport you're playing. And this is where we start to shift that understanding of, it's not about saying, I know I'm great, or I think I'm so great. It's like, okay, what are you trying to do? And are you meeting those basic goals? And then why are there feelings, or what are the feelings and why are there feelings coming in that are trying to sabotage the recognition of the facts? That to me is a difference, or that's how you build core confidence. Arrogance, like I've just never met a kid who was so arrogant that I was like, you're so arrogant. I've never met a kid who's been confident enough vocally that I've been even worried about her being arrogant. I would like to, and we play a lot of games of what we call strong statements. How do you tip the line of confidence and arrogance, and play with that to know what it feels like? Because I think we're not even coming close to it. Not even kind of. Give me a boom if you love it.
You want to answer any more of their questions, Christa, before the other one I have?
Yeah, I like this comment. Feelings are difficult for kids to name. Absolutely. How do we help kids begin to understand and label their strong feelings? Butterflies. Yep. All of this. So good. The reflection is a really big deal. And, with our programming, a lot of it is based on reflection. We kind of have these 3 different things that we like to do in order. And we have a lot of little triptychs that we do. So one of the things we do is learn. First, you're learning the skill, whatever the skill is. It could be curiosity, or it could be the way you put your oar in the water. It's skill. So you practice, you learn the skill, then you practice it. And when you're practicing it right after learning it, there's low risk because we know you're not good yet. So like anything goes, as we, as your coaches, help to refine what it looks like in practice. And finally, there's supposed to be an independent part where you are executing all that practice of the skill that you learned, but not just within your competency or comfort zone, but straight right beyond it. So that's one way we sort of teach the arc of the skill. But more importantly, the way we really look at the labeling of emotions and feelings is much more deep, but it is a loop that keeps going. And the first is insight. So how do I get to know myself a little bit better? Why we wrote this book of 118 pages and over 180 questions for kids and girls especially is because when you walk around not knowing your answers to big questions, and we found this out, I would ask a kid, like, what do you want? And she would be like, who are you? Right? When you're starting to ask questions, and I'm just randomly opening this, what are 3 things you do not want people to think about you? Are you those things? What is the bravest thing you've ever seen someone do? What was the hardest time in your life? What does the word quit or quitter mean to you? When do you like working hard? Right? There's no right answer to any of these, but knowing your answers to questions offers you the insight into yourself. One. The second thing, what you do with that insight is you start to look at your mindset. A lot of people are like, you know what? Tomorrow I'm deciding. 2022. New year, new me. I'm not going to care what anybody thinks about me, except for what I think about me, except for you have however many years old you are of habits that are playing into why you care about what other people think. By the way, most people care about what other people think, but you can start to shift the mindset there if you slowly look at what insights matter to you so that you can look at your mindset loops. I care what people think about me because I'm worried about failure. I'm cared about what people think about me because I want to succeed so much. I care about what people think about me because this is everything I know. Right. So starting with that. And then finally, we turn insight to identifying tendencies in mindset and figuring out where we want to hyper focus. And then we start to name action. So it's one thing to name what you feel, either to build core confidence or to name your feelings, but it's another thing entirely to say, I'm naming this in order to take action. And that's where we found is actually the key, particularly for teenagers. If you don't have that, like I said before, learn, practice, execute, then you're lacking the relevancy in your life and you're lacking the practical applicability of it. And when you're a kid and you don't have those 2 things, you're like, I don't need this. And so I would say that the reason why we're so sticky with Taylor and other people is that kids are like, oh, I got off a phone call and I literally used that right now. I used it tonight with my math homework, or I used it. And that is what an all-terrain skill is, a skill that can be used everywhere, in your math class, in your science class, on the erg, on your training run, jump roping by yourself, getting off your screen, off of TikTok, which is pulling you in and in and in and in, right? That takes resilience. That takes bravery. It takes curiosity of something else. Or if it helps you on the lacrosse field.
So let's, Christa, that bridges me to the other question I wanted you specifically to talk about. And I'll give these guys a little background from what Kate and Taylor and I saw this summer, which was at my rowing program. We had the amazing experience with 2 Rio Olympians coaching that squad. Both of which who had retired within 6 months of coming to my camp after having trained for a decade, and one who had actually been cut, unfortunately, for the Tokyo team about 2 weeks before the team left for Tokyo. So they were both in the boat in 2020, and then COVID hit, and then they were not in the boat. And they trained for 4 more years to make that boat. They won gold in Rio, trained 4 years, made it in 2020, not in it in 2021. And one found out she wasn't in it right before she came to camp. And I was doing my lesson on performance doesn't equal performer. Like, the value of you on the planet is not a function of the medals around your neck or whatever the trophy is for your sport. And there were like tears coming down one of those Olympians' face, right? As she was like internalizing, like, oh my God, I've just spent the last decade of my life. And she felt like she had like let the whole nation down, I'm sure, having not made the team or whatever. I don't want to project, but it was a lot for her to sit there and hear that and see that it was talking to her as well. So I obviously only rode through college, as most of you guys know, but Christa, you are the lacrosse equivalent of those coaches. So can you talk a little bit about the other really critical piece we're passionate about, which is the well-being for later, that like what you're learning now is, and the benefit of the sport now is to learn all these skills and have a great time and grow and learn about yourself, so that then you can take these skills for the next bigger hurdle you're going to have later. And that just because you win doesn't mean you're going to be happy necessarily. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yep, I can. First, I want to make sure I told you there are 3 ways to get more brave, but I only told you one way. One was no, I'm going to just say that real quickly because somebody amazingly was like direct messaging me. Thank you for that. You said one, but that's it. So honesty with self is one. Taking brave action. So anything outside of your comfort zone is 2. And the third is witnessing brave action. So those are the 3 ways to get more brave. And I'll go to those if anybody has questions in the future. But Holly, I think your point is a really big one, and it's particularly important to me. I've struggled with depression pretty hardcore since I was 8 years old. And it was always a thing. Like, I thought that I would become undepressed if I won. People told me that, like, here's a mindset of a champion. Here's how you get to winning. Here's the hill that you're climbing. Here's what hard work looks like. Here's how you stack it with skill. Here are the best players in your sport. Oh my gosh, you made, this team when you're young. And I finally get to this place where I've won a gold medal. And like, what happens then? Like, what was I didn't feel happier inside. I wasn't like, a lot of work was satiated, but at that point, I think in my particular career, I became a little bit of a commodity to people. My success was driving other people's like needs. And I didn't quite understand, like, once I won, I never thought about once I actually won, what would I then do? Once I stopped trying to go for the win, what was I then worth? And it took me a long time. And I say, like, there was 3 or 4 years where I was just like rudderless. I mean, I had my club team I was building, I was putting everything I could into kids, but to be frank, like, kids were saving me because they were being so vulnerable and real. I had never done that before. I knew that that's what I wanted in my life. So it was a really great moment where I was learning from a lot of the players that I was teaching for, having this room. And it wasn't until much later, when I look back on my own failure out of college, I eventually did go back to Princeton after a year. I met some really incredible teachers when I went to the University of Maryland for the first semester, and then to Villanova for the second semester. And what I realized is, like, I had all the skills. I just didn't know how to like use them in other places. And so for me, what I want kids to understand is that your value, your self-worth is not like linked to your sport. The value of playing your sport is learning about yourself and learning how creative, tough, resilient you can be, and getting the opportunity to practice outside of your comfort zone all the time. These are the actual skills that help you when you don't get into the college that you want, when you graduate from college and don't get your first job, when you're in a city, when you're dealing with a pandemic outside in the real world. Like, I found that the skills that that my differentiator as a lacrosse player, as an athlete, was bravery. It always was. I mean, I think I would have had the same career if I were less gritty, or if I were less optimistic, if I were less, less of a leader, but I would not have had the same career if I weren't as brave. And I understand that I would not have had the same life if I weren't as brave. It is my distinguishing characteristic. And number one, what I realize is that bravery that made me take risks on the lacrosse field, take risks with practice, take risks with being an entrepreneur, are the same things that allowed me to step outside of my comfort zone when I was struggling through the night with my depression, or to get to the end of every day. I was willing to be outside of my comfort zone, whether it was asking for help or charging through really, really tough emotions. So for me, I look at kids who are struggling and who think that they want to just play in college, and I want everyone to be able to get that opportunity. But I want you to know there's a big other side. There's the rest of your life other side. I retired at the age of 30. I'm 45 now. The last 15 years, I mean, I just ran a marathon, so go me, but like, I haven't done anything remotely that athletic, you know what I mean, for many years. And I had to undo my understanding of who I was as an athlete to understand who I was as a woman. And that's really hard. And no one is teaching us that. I would argue that the world is sort of against us learning that for real, because would we participate in all the things that function to serve, women who aren't as strong? I mean, you got to speak up. I just joined a company that's run by 2 men. This is now my 4th company that I've joined that's run by all men. This is the first. It's like, I've never had a company except for my own that I've had female the co-founders or workers. And it's a really interesting thing for me to see now at 45. Like, I have all this internal strength that I feel like some of my peers who haven't been through this like self-reflection journey that I have, to apply all the skills that we're teaching high schoolers right now, I'm applying in my day-to-day life as a 45-year-old business person. And I think that's really important.
Taylor, do you, so you're the next Christa, right? Do you, and I get this question a lot, like people, even some of the coaches from last summer called me, like, I got this college kid who, guy or girl actually, who is like all in a slump because they're not in the right boat or seat they want to be in or whatever. And I was like, yes, that's the confusion between value and like performance. So what, how have you found that mental skill transferring to your struggles and challenges and obstacles rowing in college?
I think that when they talk about like athletes that kind of lose the value of like, oh, I'm not where I want to be or where I think I should be. And I mean, I see it a lot on a college team. In my teammates, I felt it myself coming in freshman year. There's an expectation almost of, if you have been in the sport previously, of where you're going to end up. If you were at the top of the pack in high school or in your training camps and you saunter into college and all of a sudden you're a very small fish in a very big pond. And I think that one of the skills that really helped me navigate that was something that you taught, Holly, is that lead from where you are. Lead from, be a good teammate, lead from the bench, because it takes every single person on the team to make a fast boat, to make a good competitive team, because you have to have that depth of team and have good teammates and good leaders to build that support system that's driving everybody to be better, no matter who's participating actively and who's participating from the side. You're all hopefully working towards one common goal. And I think that's really important in sports and then also in life, because Christa said you end up in different companies and there's all these people working towards a common goal. So how do you build upon that when you have people that aren't necessarily contributing or feel like they're not where they want to be within that system? And then you want to be able to build each other up, because that's kind of the foundation for support in many things.
I know you want to say something, Christa.
I know. I just wanted to say, this is the thing. And, you know, having coached kids for now 25 years as a professional, it's like, you know, what we tell kids this, right? We say as coaches, we even say as teammates, I want to be a good teammate. I want you guys to be good teammates. But actually seeing that in practice and helping girls not mean girl each other, because those are the habits we're helping girls to form, whether we like it or not, whether we're trying to or not, that is what's happening. The world is making those things happen. Maybe we are too. And so you have to be really on it. You have to make sure girls are really understanding themselves, not projecting their fears or insecurities. I was with my daughter, a 7-year-old and a few 8 or 9-year-olds. And there was one kid who just kept on being so mean to all the girls, one girl. And I was like, I brought her and I was like, what is happening? They're being mean to me. I'm like, they're not being mean to you. I'm watching you be mean to them. What is on your heart? Okay. 2 minutes of silence and angering and felt like she was going to hit me in the face. And then she's finally like said this like thing that just knocked my soul out of my body. Cause I was like, she's hurting. Right? It takes a lot of due diligence. It takes a lot of being able to see this and cut through this to say like, you know, girls don't hurt each other because they like want to. It's like part habit. It's why we sort of shit on ourselves sometimes too, right? It's part habit. This is what we're supposed to be doing in this world. I don't know why it is, but dismantling this is really hard. So when Taylor, you say like, I want to lead from the team, I think about Abby Wambach and her book, what's it called? Wolfpack. Mm-hmm. Where she talks about how like she probably learned the most about being a leader. Humility was probably her most important thing she really needed to learn by the time she became a really excellent leader, is when she didn't play. And I would say like I learned the same thing when I tore my ACL my senior year of college. I had 3 months to get back to playing. And it was in those 3 months where I couldn't be on the field. I couldn't make the impact that everybody expected me to make. And I had to flex different muscles of impact to be a leader. And so with limited ability. And so that to me started to become like a new whole language that I could understand. Another example is when I went to Japan, I took the bullet train to the middle of the country and I just got off and hoped somebody would have a name, like a sign that said my name, because I did not know Japanese. And yet I was going to be teaching girls who had taken bus rides and walked 8 hours to get to this amazing turf field in the middle of who knows where. And it was the most incredible experience because I learned as a coach, how do I not use language to teach sport, to teach intensity, to help kids understand that I'm passionate about what they're trying to do, that I'm grateful that they came all this way. And how did we get girls in Japan to, in less time than I would in an English speaking anywhere town in Europe, in the United States, how did we get them to go so much faster and do all these complicated drills? It's because they were like, we don't understand you either, lady. So we got to look carefully and deal from both sides. We were trying to hook in. And those are the 2 examples that have made me like a sort of a different coach outside of my struggles with my own depression. That's made me be so much more, I mean, I'm like just an empath, like crazy, and understand emotional stuff. Somebody was private chatting me about growth mindset. And I want to make sure that you guys know a little bit of the science that we built this stuff on. You know, like the lot of the programming that I've written for many, many years that really works does fall back on this idea of the underdog, right? How do you transcend beyond obstacles, right? Whether or not you are privileged, whether or not you have obstacles, however you were born, whatever set of circumstances you have in your sport, right? For me, I grew up in the hotbed of lacrosse. I grew up in Annapolis, Maryland. Like everybody in my town played lacrosse. I'm one of 6 kids. We all played in high school and college. My sister played on the USA team with me, and my other sister played at Princeton with me. So like, you know, we know lacrosse. And this is sort of what we're supposed to do. But for me as a good player, I was always like, somebody's chasing me. There's something that there's an imaginary person or thing that's going to beat me somehow, some way. And I'm fighting that thing. I am the David to that Goliath that I was creating in my own head. And for me, I was always the underdog. I'm obsessed with underdog stories. And so a lot of our mental skills training is about putting yourself in that underdog position, because when you're talking about fear, right, it is an obstacle that is all consuming. You are the underdog to your fear. It's not that you can't overcome it. It's that we oftentimes just sit right where we are and like let it compress us. And so we built this on a lot of really cool proven things like I've been very inspired by just like military training, when you can get thousands of people to do the same thing, when you get people to be on a massive team that size. I'm interested in the recovery process of people in addiction, because I feel like to overcome something like that is pretty insane. That's sort of the super underbelly. And then we do a lot of Carol Dweck. So it's growth mindset. I'll grab her book. Charles Duhigg, who's sort of the godfather of habit study. Maybe you've all heard of James Leith, which is the Atomic Habits guy, but you got to do his predecessor, who's this guy named Charles Duhigg. Amazing. We've done a lot of stuff with like, how do you become an expert among experts? And that's Anders Ericsson's work in a book called Peak. So I'm happy to give these things. I'll Holly, as you talk a little bit more, I'll go grab a selection and you guys can see the books. But it's a lot of stuff that's amalgamated into one. There's my experiences. There's every kid whose stuff I've ever read for 10 years. And I think this is really important. I'll tell two more stories, and I just have to make sure you understand this is so key to the way that we look at things. And I'm lucky enough to have experienced these as hard as it was. When I failed out of college, I went to the University of Maryland. That's where I was, from Annapolis, Maryland. My parents were like, I can't look at you right now. You need to go and deal with yourself and matriculate somewhere. So I went, I didn't matriculate actually, but I went to classes. And when I showed up at the University of Maryland, what was ironic is the head women's lacrosse coach at the University of Maryland, who, by the way, had just beat us in the national championship game the 2 years previously. So whatever, I don't have issues or anything. She sees me and she gets me to the front of the line and to help me sign up for classes. I sign up for the two classes that are basically left: military history, which inspires me to become a political science major at Princeton, which is amazing. If I hadn't found that class, I don't know what I've done. And African-American creative writing. And my teacher was a woman named Valerie Jean, and she had us take a journal every day for the entire semester. I'd never done anything for any single day of my entire life. But that reflection journal, I was saying a lot of crazy stuff in there because I was a super sad kid, and she would take me seriously. Every day I'll be writing crazy stuff. She'd be like, tell me more about that. Instead of saying, I can't believe you feel this way, or no, you shouldn't feel this way. She acknowledged my feelings and took me seriously. So when we did X Team, well, you guys now know X Team is the thing that we're talking about now. But when I did my lacrosse club, then Holly did her Ready, Set, Row, we did reflections, and we had 100 kids in the program at any one time with us, and they would write 4 to 5 pages a day of reflections, and we would read all of them in order to answer them privately so that they knew somebody was reading them. That's where they expressed all their feelings, told us all their stuff. And so for 15 years, I read teenagers' stuff, essentially the entire millennial generation and some of Gen Z. And so that is where I feel like I bring in the story of having done a journal like that at the age of 19. I have everything that I thought and felt at the age of 19, which, by the way, is just basically what I think and feel right now, but I'm much more organized and I can deal and I'm sturdier. And helped kids to take their reflection books, and then we would give those reflections back to them. And so that is what I want for every single kid out there. Every single adult out there is a way to track your feelings and your answers to certain questions at any moment in time. So you can look back and say, like, this is my own Bible of how I feel, and let you and build that up as your core confidence, which is obviously the idea behind this journal. Sorry, I get crazy. I get so excited. Give me a boom just so I know you're with me.
We got to rein you in, Christa. It's so awesome.
Sorry.
So you guys, I didn't talk about it a lot, and I want to be respectful of your time. We got like 10 minutes left or so. But when I heard about Christa through my college roommate, actually, and I guess we talked the first time, and I was like, we are peas in a pod. Just you play lacrosse and I play rowing, because you're both very self-aware, super reflective, and kind of like kill switch type athletes, just playing totally different sports, like almost polar opposite type sports. But it automatically, we saw like, we're actually doing the same thing. And I am the definition of underdog in collegiate rowing at 5'6" and like 140 pounds when I showed up. So what I wound up doing when I was my husband actually pushed me out of the private equity firm job, being like, you shouldn't be doing this, you should be coaching. And I started noodling on, can I go back into coaching rowing? And Christa was running her club team in one of the last few years. And she was like, I'm doing this long weekend. You should get out here and watch. Or maybe I said, can I come watch? And she was like, sure. So I flew out there and I'm watching her, and right, I knew how powerful it was. I knew how much the connection she had between these athletes, because I could see that they knew she and the other coaches there really cared about them as people, right? Not as machines to win medals or trophies. And And then I asked, do you mind if I experiment on some of the stuff I would use on rowers, on these lacrosse players who don't know me at all, or any of the techniques that I would use to get them to perform beyond the point where they think they can perform, right? Which is what rowing basically is, all of it. And she was like, sure. And we tried and it worked. Like on the first go, it worked. And she made me run these like sprints around a track. So I had a new appreciation for lacrosse. And it was really powerful, I think, for both of us, that we were like, there's something going on here. Like, what is this? What does youth development through sport really look like? Like, how can you actually use these sports to transform these athletes, build a relationship that is one that shows empathy for and recognizes their feelings and all the things Christa is talking about, but also is steering them towards what they want, right? Not what we want or some other coaches may want when they say they're looking at their own like medal history or whatever, or records. So that was really amazing. And that sort of kicked off the partnership and collaboration that Christa and I've had for like 6 years. So the last, up until the pandemic, right, Christa was, and I would come to some of the events, but was doing in-person Brave training sessions from like, you know, I don't know if you did lower elementary, at least upper elementary, all the way through like adult men and women, okay? At all these, that's how she got all that data, and the team got all this data. And it was actually the pandemic that forced us to figure out like, oh God, you can't actually do an in-person Brave session, like where you're actually teaching these lessons to people. Can you do it virtually? And the short answer is yes, you can absolutely do it virtually. And Christa is like agile, you know, business wise too, right? So we pivoted pretty quick to see, can you make the kinds of transformation that we feel strongly about and is worth someone's time and worth our time over a computer? And we know that the answer is yes. And we also know that there is a common language spoken among passionate coaches and athletes, particularly female athletes who are playing these sports, who have the ambition to increase their performance, where they may be playing different sports, but they're all playing what we call this mental game, right? They play a different sport, but they play the same mental game, right? The same struggle with the self-doubt, the stress, the anxiety, the performance, just generally the pressure to perform. And so what we wound up doing is narrowing our virtual programming to the main target that we feel the most passionate about, that we feel is the most critical in terms of transforming people at a life-changing point for them, this drop that she's talking about, which is the teenage years for girls who play sports. So we basically finalized how are we going to teach all of these skills into these young teenage women. And this is the program that Christa and I have worked on. Christa's heading up, called X Team, which is a virtual membership for teenage girls who play sports, where they want to gather with other young women who are passionate about learning about themselves, becoming their best selves, increasing their performance, absolutely. But we're teaching the mental skills, the same ones that Taylor and Christa have been talking about, that they will need to add on to their current club teams, right? So this is virtual programming, like 3-4 hours a month, where they learn these skills from Christa and other experts in the fields from different sports. They have their own Brave coach assigned to them, so the person that's going to read them and connect with them and mentor them. And they'll have this community of other young women who play different sports. I've learned so much from Christa playing lacrosse, not just from other rowers, so that they can have that accountability, support, and all these new skills to really grow through these years up until their college years. Do you have anything to add to that, Christa?
Yeah, I think what we realized throughout the pandemic is, and by the way, we're obsessed with managing and measuring impact. And so we were using the same measurement scales throughout the pandemic, even though we weren't running the same 90-minute, very hardcore in-person session. And we were having the same impact with, you know, the Maryland women's field hockey team who went to the Final Four after the first time in many, many years, or working with the NC State all women's sports sort of coalition. But when we really looked at it, when working with high school teenagers, it's where the impact is ultimately best made. Where habits, when you look at that insight, mindset, action loop, where we're really making the biggest impact. And it relied on a bunch of different things. One, really good, honest content, really good, consistent delivery and fun delivery of that content that's not creeping in on their time, understands that kids are busy, that this is about us being a support and safety net. And then most importantly, which, you know, we looked at is like that they're with each other. I use this all the time. Like, if you want to crush it in your life, we want to help you. It has nothing to do with whether we're crushing our life, because we're trying to crush it in our own life, but we want to gather kids, especially who want to crush it in their lives. And that looks really different for a lot of kids. Some kids, it's about like making sure they're really consistent and showing up every day. Some for me, sometimes it looks like me hydrating every day, since I don't do that enough. And regardless of what sport you're in, I think that what kids love the most about that is like the solidarity, understanding like, I'm not the only person who feels this way. Then why am I not talking about it with all the other people like me? Right? Like, that is the cool part. And so watching them be accountable to each other and like making their connections is so cool. I just, like, as a lacrosse player, I would have died to have been able to be like on a team, but not with just lacrosse players, like with basketball players, soccer players, like rowers, archers, like whoever wanted to crush it out there. And I knew that even on my USA lacrosse team, there were very few other people, even on that level, who wanted to crush it like me. Everything. They wanted to crush music listening. They wanted to crush fashion. They wanted to crush a red lip. They wanted to crush, you know what I mean? Whatever. Right? As much as I wanted to crush sports and all the other things, those are the people I wanted to be around. And so we formulated this after the last 2 years of really working with people. First started with Taylor. What do you really want? What does it look like to show up in support of somebody who's really trying to do some hard things? What does her life look like when it's hard and busy? And then we've sort of come up with this really great answer, which we call X Team. It's the name of my previous company. Actually, we loved it so much, but you sign up, it's a monthly membership. You get new themes of content every month that add on to your life, that are additive, that feel really important. Your Brave Squad coach, you're assigned sort of to a coach after you fill out a really big questionnaire, so they can get to know you. And then all of your coaches, other kids on their team, makes your Brave Squad. And you sort of train with those people, mental skills stuff, and they hold you accountable with your goals. So imagine like a personal board of directors / amazing team, where you're the captain of your own team. And then you're on the team of anybody else on your squad who's also the captain of their team. It's really cool. You get introduced to experts, and, you know, we link you to all the support that you need to scaffold this mental side of whatever game it is that you're playing. And so I would say the biggest thing is it's a collection of girls who want to crush it and know that, like, this is part of that piece.
There's a question if it's virtual. Right now it is virtual. I think we would love to see some in-person gatherings. I mean, the pandemic is the main driver for us not looking at that right this second. I can tell you for, you know, my little camp, and when I ran, we've done several different virtual programs, Christa and I both separately, to see like what works, how do you transfer, how do you make sure that they're really getting all this material and keeping them engaged. And there is tremendous benefit, you guys, to having a coach who really cares about you, who can mentor you, who isn't the coach making selection decisions, right? So like, we don't actually care what boat you're in. We just want to make sure we can support you in all the things that you're struggling with. And so if I had a coach that I could have even just vented to, you know, and know that there were no repercussions and nothing bad was going to happen after I did that, and this person was just going to support me right where I was, that would have been amazing. So this is not to replace your club or your team. This is meant to support you and sort of run tangentially to your, you know, whatever club or team you play on right now, and support your pursuit of excellence in whatever that looks like for you. So
I'll say two things. One is the last one we did was a really intense month in November for lacrosse players. We hyper focused on lacrosse players. I wanted to get the last tiny morsel out. And we did 8 sessions in 1 month, 8 live sessions. That was 2 a week. It was a lot. It was intense. We said, how much can we possibly push? And everybody's like, that was so intense, I could barely hang on, you know, and nobody wanted 8 sessions. But when it ended, they're like, oh, where'd you go? Hello. I was feeling so great. I'm like, okay, you just gotta wait till February now. So I think that was the biggest key for us, that like having something that was light enough that just kept going, that it accumulated and compounded, that you could work into your life, that felt really natural in that way, was really important. You know, there was one thing I wanted to say, Holly, about the events. I think in a world where the pandemic is fully over, we would basically say, hey, there's a one-off event here. We're going to go to, let's say, New York City. That's where I'm located. And we're going to do a day and a half in New York City. You pay the extra fees or whatever. You come in and we train in New York City, whatever the focus is. Maybe it's nutrition. Maybe it's, concrete jungle training. Maybe it's like, we work with my boxing trainer from the 2005 World Cup or whatever. Like we do something really fun where it's like so intense and then you leave. You know what I mean? Like you come and get that and you're like, okay. Maybe that's during August or something. Like, so
like an injection. You get a Christa injection.
Yeah, like it's like you come in, you just go nuts and have all that training put to use, and then you go, and then you see all these people come. So I think once we get, a couple hundred members, we don't, it's not that we care about getting big. We really want to have small time, really potent, important impact with the people who join, and it won't be big for a while, hopefully, so that we can really work with people who are in it. And that would be the coolest thing for us is in-person events, if we can have them safely, but only if we can.
Until we can do that, if we can do like meetups, like we did like ahead of the Charles meetup where we just were like, hey, we're going to be at this thing at 3 p.m. and like 45 people showed up. I mean, it was awesome. Then you just meet, you can meet people that you've seen on the computer screen. So I put in the chat, Craig, I was thinking about your daughter being a great person to participate, but I put in the chat, the website is morebrave.com. You guys, we're going to start officially this in February. And so coaches are being assigned now. We have limited spots. So if you're interested, I encourage you to sign up. The first month is free for everyone. So there's no risk, right? You can cancel it if you're like, I hate this lady actually, and I don't want to do this anymore. I won't you won't say that, I promise.
It's happened.
But you can if you want. And then it's just $29 after that. So try it for the first month, right? You got nothing to lose. Like be brave, try something new. And if you're like, I can't handle her, she's too much, and you can
True.
leave.
I know that's about myself. I'm very self-aware. You either love me or you hate me, that's for sure. And
but
if you can't go on my list, I don't know what to do about that.
I can tell you in my camps, Christa, for the last 6 years, when I ask people like their favorite thing, it's always one of the things listed on there, even if you were a talking head on the computer, because we had to do it virtually. Yeah. So you guys, it is the goal is transformation, right? For the athletes. And these are some of the skills that we know can be really transformational for teenage girls. And so we care about you and we want to be there for you. So please, I'm going to put, I'll put our emails in here.
And if your best friend is the same as you, she wants to crush it, but she plays a different sport, this is a place where you guys could both be for sure. I would say the age, like if you're a senior in high school or even a junior, it's not too late because you have all the months until, maybe people want to take this college. I'm certain we'll get some college kids interested in doing this. We're focused on, high school female athletes. But we'll take people as young as 7th grade. When you come in, you'll be on a team only with people in your grade, right? So your Brave squad will be only people in your grade. And theoretically, you'd stay with your Brave squad coach until you graduate from your high school or the program whenever you decide to leave. So in that way, that it offers a ton of consistency.
Awesome. So it is 9:35. I want to be respectful of your guys' time, but I have a few more minutes. And if Christa does or Taylor, if anyone has any questions, if you got to jump off, I so appreciate you guys joining us. I will post the recording. Does anyone have any
before you jump off? That's always fun.
What'd you say?
I'm out. Boom, I'm out. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Does anyone have any questions they want to turn off? Or Kate, did you see anything that you feel might be I can scroll up too because there were a bunch of really great questions.
Thanks for coming. Bye, Irma.
Irma was on my alumni board call.
Thank you, Aisley. Bye, Emma. You're welcome.
Connie had asked, I don't know if she's still on here. I know Connie's a coach, actually, Christa. She had asked, how do you instill confidence? How do you instill confidence about themselves and their skills in young girls when they train in a boathouse alongside with boys?
Yeah. Listen, like there's a real big case for single sex education and for training in sports. I think it's really hard. And you just got to go so far deep into the core confidence. You can't change the outside things. So you got to control the controllables. And it requires a lot of self-awareness and core confidence. It really does. There's no easy answer for that.
I don't take boys at my camp. because I don't want them interfering.
I love boys. I mean, I could give you the hardcore data around when we have boys and girls together in the same place. It just, the girls get twice as brave, the boys get half as brave. It's not a great statistic. I hate it, but it's very, very real, and it's loud, in that boys do not yet see girls at that age as a threat. And so they are not pushed outside of their comfort zone. And that makes me so angry. So I'm like, okay, well, let's just go over here and get really brave. So when we go back together with boys, and they know the power. But for right now, girls are more scared when boys are around, and boys are less scared when girls are included. And when we're trying to work on fear and bravery, you need the fear. And which is why girls get twice as brave in the presence of the boys, but they participate half as much. And boys get half as brave as they would if it was an all male group. So it's actually it's not that great for girls to not participate in a group equally with boys, even if they're getting more brave. It's not the same kind of it's not a bravery with staying power. It's a rise to the occasion, but it's like a gratefulness that it's over when it's over. So I hate these statistics. I don't like to say them, but they are in fact what we read in our data.
Anyone else have any other questions? And most of these I'm scrolling through, you answered, Christa.
Yeah.
No, nothing?
And if anybody has any questions I want to follow up, we're happy to answer them. Appreciate it.
I don't see any more. Thanks, Christa. Thanks, Taylor.
You're welcome. Thank you, guys.